In this video we will create the Google Chrome's famous offline dinosaur game from scratch in Vanilla JavaScript. Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Sohail and today we will create the dinosaur game in JavaScript in a simple way. So let's get straight into it. I have a very simple setup done here already. I have a bunch of files like index.html, empty app.js and an empty style sheet. And in my index.html I have just a simple boilerplate and I have linked my style sheet and my script file. Let's start off by creating a game container here. And here we need a player element and one obstacle element. Let's give them some basic styles. So here on the game container we have given the position as relative, and for the player and obstacle elements we have given position as absolute, so that we can position these elements inside the game container. Let's save our files and run this in our VS Code's live server. And this is how it looks. I'll increase the height of my obstacle. Oops. Alright, let's add jump animation on our player. So whenever I have this jump class on my player element, I will add this animation. So here we will start with 0%, and at 0% the bottom position will be 0, and then at 100 position as well the bottom position would be 0. Now here we can do 50% and set the bottom position to something like, let's say, 250 pixels, but we want the player to stay in the air for a while and then come back. So for that we will change this to 25. So at 25% the player jumps and it stays there till, let's say, 40%. Let's see how it looks. Oh, we need to add this jump class. Alright, now we will make this obstacle element move from right to the left of the screen. Now again, for that we will need one animation. At 0% we want the left position to be at 100%, and at 100% we can make it let's say minus 100 pixels, so that it goes beyond our screen. Now here our player keeps on jumping infinitely. We don't want that. We want our player to jump only when we press space or up arrow key. So let's add that. First of all, I will remove this jump class from here. And let's go to our app.js file, and here I will create a function jump. And here I can grab the player element and add this class jump, and after some time remove that class so that the player jumps only once. So let's query the element first. And I will add a set timeout, and I will provide the timer as, let's say, 1200 milliseconds. And here I can remove that class. We can call this jump function on clicking anywhere in the screen. So on the body I'll add on click. Let's see how it goes. So if I click, the player jumps. Awesome. Now one more thing we want to make sure is, when the player is already in jump state, we don't want to add the jump class again. So for that I will create a flag. I'll set it to false initially, and I'll check here. If the player is in jumping state, I will return. Else I'll set the jumping state to true, and here I can set it back to false. Alright, let's call this jump function on space click and up arrow click as well. So I will create another function here and call it add jump listener. Here I can check the event.key is equals space or up arrow. If yes, I can simply call this jump function. Now we need to call this add jump listener. So I'll create a main function here and I'll call it right away. And here I can call this add jump listener. So now let's test this. If I click space, it should jump, yes. If I click up arrow, yeah, awesome. Now we just need to check for collision. So whenever there is a collision, we can stop the game. So let's create a function which will check for collision. Now to check the collision between two elements, we need to get the X collision and the Y collision. To check the X collision, we need to compare the rightmost point of the obstacle and check if that is greater than left point of the player, and if the obstacle's left point is less than the player's right point. This will give us X collision. And for Y collision, we can simply check the bottom point of the player element if it is greater than the top point of the obstacle. So we need to get the coordinates of both the elements. To do that, I will use this get bounding client rect method available on an element, which will give us the left, right, bottom, top, the height and width, everything of an object. So let's grab that. I'll store it inside some variable. Similarly, we need the same thing for our obstacle element as well. So I'll copy this and change the player to obstacle. Let's grab the obstacle element as well. Awesome. Now let's get the X collision, which would be the obstacle right if it is greater than left point of player, and obstacle L is less than the right point of player. This would give us the X collision. And for Y collision, we just need to check the bottom point of player is greater than the top point of the obstacle. This should actually be T and this would be top. Then we can return X collision and Y collision. So this function will give us if the player and obstacle element are colliding at a given point in time. Now we need to monitor this collision, let's say every 10 milliseconds, and see if both elements are colliding or not. So I'll create another function here. I will create an interval which will run every 10 milliseconds, and here I can check if elements are colliding. So if there is a collision, I can just alert that you died. So let's test this real quick. Oh, we need to call this monitor collision in our main function. So yeah, the moment it collided, we are giving this alert. Now let's jump here. It collided from the top. Yep, it's working. Now that we have our collision in place, let's work on the scoreboard to display the score and the high score. So I'll go to my index.html, and here in my game container, I will create one element So here we will display the score and here the high score. Let's add some styles for it. Let's add some JavaScript for it. So here I will create a variable to store the score. I'll initialize it to 0 and then let's create a function which will set the score. Here we need to grab the score element, which is this element over here. So let's grab that. And here I can get the score element and set the inner text to our new score. We also need to update the score variable, so I'll add it here. We will need to keep on incrementing the score unless the player dies. So for that I'll create another function. Here we need to create an interval which will run every 100 milliseconds, and we can just set the score to score plus 1. We can call this count score function here. So let's test this. If I come here and reload, it keeps on counting the score. Now let's maintain the high score as well. So I'll create a variable high score and I'll get the store and get the value in local storage. So let's get item high score and I'll create a function which will set the high score. We'll also need to update the DOM, so let's query the high score element first. So I'll go all the way up and let's grab the high score element. And here we can also set the high score element dot inner text. And here we also need to update the local storage. So I'll get local storage and set item high score, which is our new score. We will create one more function to check if the current score is greater than high score. So if score greater than high score, we can set the high score using the set high score function which we just created and pass the score. Now we need to check this high score once the player is dead. So I'll go up where we are checking for collision, and here I can call this function check for high score. And we will also need to call this set high score in our main function so that initially we set the high score element. Now once we have died, the high score should update to 17. Awesome. Now that we have our functionalities ready, let's work on the styling part. So here let us create one folder to store our images. I will call it assets. And I have a bunch of images downloaded from the internet and I'll paste them here. Let's start with the game container first. Let's add some background to our game container. I'll remove this collision detection for a second because this is kind of disturbing us. Alright, let's move this background image slightly so that it gives us an impression that the player is moving forward. So for that, I'll create one animation. Now it's looking much better. Let's style the scorecard. Let's change this to span elements so that they come in a single line. Alright, I have one font downloaded already, which is Minecraft. Let's use that. First I need to define the font face. And in our scorecard, let's add that font family. Let's also give it a white color. Awesome, looking much better now. Now let's style our player element. So for that I have this Dino GF, which is a GIF image. I also have one Dino PNG, which is a still image, which is not animating, which we can use when the player is in jump state. So when the player is in jump state, I will update the background image to dino.png. Let's test this. Alright, now we have our animated Dino GIF. Now once I jump, it changes to the PNG background, so it gives us an impression that the dino has stopped moving. Awesome. Now the only thing left is the obstacle. Let's style the obstacles as well. Again, I have one more image for our obstacle. Let's use this. Awesome. Now the only thing is the size of this obstacle remains same. So let's try to randomize the size of the obstacle so that sometimes it comes as big and sometimes as small. So for that I will create a bunch of classes. I have created a bunch of classes, extra small, small, medium and large, and we need to just dynamically and randomly add these classes to our obstacle element. So I'll go to my app.js file and let's store all the available sizes. First I will create a function which will return as a random obstacle size. So this will give us a random number between 0 and the length of obstacle -1. And here we can return the size. Now let's create a function which will actually apply these styles. Here again we will create an interval and the timer here would be 300 milliseconds. Now this should be same as the animation time of our obstacle, which is 3 seconds here. That's because once the obstacle element reaches here, we will change the size so that when it comes again, it will be reflected with the new size or the new class. First we will get a random size. We have already created one function for it. And now we need to grab the obstacle element and update the class name. First the base class as it is and then the size. So let's save this and let's actually call this function in our main function. Now let's check. Now we have this size and now we have smaller one. And now again it should update. Right, awesome. Now we can uncomment this monitor collision again and let's play the game. The only thing which I'm not satisfied with is the alert box. So instead of this alert box, we will show another screen which will ask us to restart the game. So I'll go to my index HTML, and here let's create an element. I'll call it restart game. Let's style this. So this is how it looks like. Now we need to show this once the player has died instead of this alert box. So initially I will set the visibility to hidden, and then once we add this class show to this restart game element, so initially it would not be visible, as you can see. So let's create another function to stop the game, and here I will grab this restart game element and add this class show to it. So let's grab the element first, and here I will get this class list and add show to it. So let's call this stop game instead of the alert. Now once the player hits the obstacle, it shows us this restart screen, but it should also stop the player, the obstacles, and the score as well. So for that, first we will need to stop all the intervals which we have created. So first we will store the interval IDs in some variables, and in the stop game we will clear those intervals. Awesome, let's see. Now it has stopped the score and all the other intervals, but we need to stop these animations as well. And now we need to pause the animation state. So for that I'll create one class stop. When it is applied to the game container, we'll update the game container's animation play state to pause. We also need it for the obstacle as well. So now we just have to add this class stop to our game container. So I'll go to the stop game function, and here I will grab the game container element. We need to select it first. Let's check this as well. Alright, we can also set this player image to the still image which we are using in the jump state. So here I can add one more style, so that once the player has died, it will stop moving. Awesome. And now on this button click, let's reload the game. So I will create one more function, restart, which will simply reload our page. And we can call this on click of this button. Once the player hits the obstacle, the game stops, and if I click on restart, it starts again. And we can finally get rid of the borders which we have added to complete our game. And yeah, here we go, our game is ready. If you have any questions, you can comment them down below. I want you to build this game and extend it with more features like increasing the difficulty by increasing the speed, adding bird obstacles, ability to duck or crouch, etc. I hope that this project helped you in some way. Please leave a like and comment if you enjoyed this tutorial. It will really motivate me to continue making such projects. And don't forget to subscribe the channel for more such content. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you in the next one.